actually, let's start working on this save to cloud now. Okay, so now that we have this, it's saying, hey, I'm going to post to your network, save to cloud. All right, so now we come over here. And the easiest way to do this is router.post. And we call this save to cloud. So let's copy this over. Save to cloud. And we're going to pass it a function with a request and a response. And what are we doing? We're saving to the cloud. All right, so this is all fine and good, and we're going to save to the cloud, or save to the database. It would be a better way to put it. So save to the database. So now comes the fun part. How do we even connect to the database, you ask? Well, we gotta add a couple things. So I use Mongoose to connect to MongoDB or our MLab. So we're gonna do var mongoose. Just require mongoose. Okay, and right there we have mongoose in our system. Okay. All right, what else do we need? All right, so now that we have mongoose, the next thing to talk about is how are we going to save it to mongoose? So if we look over, so if we look over at MLab, really quick, let me just log in, just so I can show you how our MLab is set up. Get rid of you. All right, so if we look at our accounts and our metrics, everyone remembers accounts. This is how our database is stored for, our login data. And then we also have metrics, which I used for my metrics. These are two different collections. So the way that I have my MongoDB set up is that I have multiple collections based off of API modules. So, we're creating this cloud save module. So we should make a cloud save collection. Now within this collection, similar to how we did with matrix. We are not in the matrix, folks. With metrics, we used username and email to kind of gauge who we're talking about and who needs to be signed in. And then we put their data in. So much in the same way that we did that, we're gonna so they're gonna have to be signed in. So they're gonna all need a username. So we're gonna do similar to how we did in metrics. So how do we do it in metrics? So here's where we're gonna take a look at it. This is another reason why I did metrics so early on, was it was a good way to see how this works together. So metrics.js. Okay. So right here, schemas. Username, email, and then I did data, just a basic data. So really, new schema, mongoose. Okay. So we're gonna take this, because this is gonna be kind of our rough base on how we're gonna do a schema. We're gonna come over to our cloud save, and we are going to come over here and do this. Now instead of metric, we're gonna do something like save equals new mongoose.schema. I'm sorry, mongoose.schema. Okay, so we're gonna keep username and email the exact same. So right here, it's defining, this is how this is going to be set up. So this is still from the metric. So username, email, and data. So if we go into metrics, we see username, email, and data. Okay, that's all that this is doing. Okay, so we're defining how we want it to look in our database is the best way to explain this. And we're giving it a couple extra requirements. So like required, so it has to be required, has to be unique, or it doesn't create in the database. Okay, instead of data, because I put this within an array, we are going to do more along this line. We're just gonna, a second, we're not gonna put unique. Not gonna put index. Okay, so we want to put a string, and do we want to require it? You want to? Yes, we're gonna require it, and then we're gonna call this, instead of data, let's call this save data. That way, it's a little bit more. It's a little easier for us to understand. Okay, so username, email, and save data. So right now we don't need a config data, but I mean, if we needed a config data, you know what? I'll just put it in. Why not? Because eventually you might need it. So let's put in config data. Or not config data, global data, I'm sorry. Let's put in global data and let's turn the required to false. That way it's just not technically needed when we create the data, when we create these models. So the next thing that we have to do is we actually have to make a model based off this schema. And the best way to do this, I found, is to make it saves. So we're going to do a collection of save schemas. So we're going to call it saves. Var saves equals, what is this? mongoose.model. And we're going to call it mongoose model. No. How do we do this again? All right. Saves. This is passed as a string because that's what it's gonna be, and it's passed a save. Okay, that's how we do this. Okay, so we're gonna make a model from this, and we're gonna call it saves, and it's gonna use the save schema. Okay, this will be important when we actually start trying to find stuff along those lines. So this is just a model of the schema. So we can come in here and say, hey, find me a username of Nelderson. And it'll make more sense as we start diving into this a little more. So let's look back at metrics. And if we look here, it's a little convoluted, but the biggest thing, yeah, we should probably talk about that, huh? All right, so the API module actually forwards on this decoded name and decoded email. So really quick, before, I know this is a little bit more complicated, but if we go into the authenticated API, so we have, here we go. Request.decoded equals decoded. Everything is good. Save to request for use in other routes. So request.decoded gives you the decoded username and email. So you can use name, email, anything along those lines that you can find in the account. So anything that you can find in account, you can find over here. So, oh, no. It's what I put in the JOT, the JWT. Never mind. I lied. It only has name and email. So when I put this name and email, we can actually just take these. And actually, we're going to put this right in Cloud Save. Well, we don't need this testing, so we can get rid of that. So we're going to save to the database. So first thing we need is the name and email, the user that is coming to us. And remember, we're checking if they have a token every single time from this right here. And then this is passing along the name and email through this decoded name and decoded email. Okay, so a very important point to note. So that's how you get a name and email right off the bat for them. Okay, so we got the name and the email, and then the save data equals the request.body dot, it's just going to be the straight data. So request.body. So we're sending, So the data is just being put over as a string. So it's actually just the entire body is going to be our data. Okay. So for those who don't know, request.body is just the uncompressed. So like if I did, if I put this in an object and I said save data, I could take this and say request.body.save data. But you want to know what, for us, we're going to keep it like this. This is kind of more conventional standard in web development. When you're sending over JSON, just do it as an object. So you want to let's keep it as an object. We're going to call save data is equal to this data, which is the compressed base64 string. Okay, so now the save data over here is actually in the body, and it's the dot. So it's the save data key that has the data object. Okay, fair enough. All right, so our save data is in this request body dot save data. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is check to see. Where do I want to put this? All right, you want to what? So now the issue is we got our name, we got our email, we got our save data. So now we have to say, hey, save it to the database. But the reality is you don't even know if it's in the database yet. You don't even know if my name's in the database yet. So let's use something. I am just going to come over to metrics. I know I have this. So we used it with metrics, but instead of using it with metrics, let's use it. I don't know why this needs to be here. I don't think it needs to be here. Okay. Saves. Find one user account. Just make sure I get all my. All right. Now that we got all our brackets in place. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, look through all of our saves in our database and find one with a username equal to my name, and then we're gonna run a function. Let's just say if error console.log error. Okay, which is a terrible way of doing it, but we're going to do it for right now. And if account, so this is if it finds the account. If account, and then we're going to do an else. And right here, we're going to make new account. Because if it finds the account, we want it to update so we want to update save data. And here we want to make new account with save data. Update save data to database. Okay, so here's what's going on. We're saying, hey, check the database, find one with the username equal to our name. Okay, and if you find the account, update the save data to the database, because we only have that one save data to the database. If not, make a new account with the save data. So actually, all right, so this one's pretty simple. I'm going to make this into, so let's make a new user. So we're going to say var new user is equal to, so here's where we get a little, this you just have to know from mongoose. So we're going to say new saves, which is taking that model, and it passes, I believe, just an object. Really quickly, let me just check the metrics. So new user metric, yeah, it just takes a straight. Okay, all right, fair enough. So we're gonna do new saves, and we're gonna it needs a username and email and a save data, because they're all required. We could put some sort of global data here, Well, just for today, we'll throw something random there. So username is equal to the name right up here. Email, it's equal to the email right over here. And save data is equal to, yeah, I called it the same thing. Okay, save data. And then we could put global data if we want. I'm just gonna do it with test, because why not? All right, so new user, do that. I forget if I have to, oh, new user.save. Okay, so yeah, you have to run the .save. Okay, so you want what? Let me just good old-fashioned copy that. All right, so we got that new user, which gives us the model of a new save or new saves, which we then can run the save function. If error, console log error. I don't need that. I really don't need to send that. .send. Okay, so this return res status 200.send is pretty much just telling the client that everything is all good, and then you could technically send a message and you could listen to something over here. So if you do like a .done on this post, you could actually, you know, use send data from here, receive it here, and do all sorts of other stuff with it. But for right now, it's just a simple post, a simple return status of, hey, everything went okay. And then the client gets that and says, okay, and I'm done. So it just doesn't hang up or do anything silly. That's all that this is doing. So new user.save, if an error, console log the error. If not, just return it, hey, everything's okay. Sweet. All right, new save. So this is if they have no account. What happens if they do have an account? So what are we trying to do there? Well, this I also did in my metrics.js. Find one and update. And we'll do it more like this. I am gonna copy this because it's gonna be very similar. All right, so we're gonna copy that. Let's make sure we get all our brackets in there. Get all our brackets. So instead of metrics, it's going to be saves, because that's our model. Find one and update. Username, name. So here's what's going on. It's saying find one of a username and name and update. And this is doing what's called a push to a data array, which is not what we're doing. The reason why I did it for this is because I actually have an array, and it's an array of arrays, and that's why I did this push function. For us, we are just setting. So we want to, instead of push, I'm just gonna do $set. And once again, this is something that you would have to look up within the Mongoose documentation. This isn't just a known thing. This is something that you actually have to look up. This is very specific to MongoDB. But like I said, this is something you can look up the documentation. It's really, really simple. You know, like how do I find and update something in the database? There's so many examples out there of how this is done. So don't feel like you have to learn this on your own or anything like that. Like there's plenty out there to help you along with this. Okay, so find one and update. So we want to take the username. We want to find our username because we kept it username. Okay. And we want to set the save data to this save data. So we want to take our... So here's what we're doing. We're taking our saves model. So we're looking through the database. We're saying, okay, you found our account, Nelderson. Okay, I want you to find Nelderson, and I want you to take his save data and set it to our new save data that we have in our body save data. And then we're gonna run a function, and we're gonna do our terrible handling of if error, do error, console log error. Okay. And if there is not an error, we're just going to do our res send done. Sweet. Okay, we're going to just send an A-OK, everything's fine. Okay, because we're going to assume that this just works. Now, this also returns a data function of what it used to be, which could be useful to some people. But we have no need for it. I believe it does not give you what has been updated. I believe it's the previous. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure on that. Okay, just to keep that in mind.